Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of DejaVue, your favorite Vue podcast. You just don't know it yet. Or maybe you do, maybe you're a long-time listener, or maybe it's the first episode you've ever listened, so welcome to the show. And as you've seen, or as you hear, Michael is once again still on paternity leave, but he will be back very, very soon, next week. You've heard him last week already, and you will hear him next week again. I'm very convinced about that. So yeah, and of course, I can't do the podcast alone. So instead, I have an amazing guest here. He's once again a public speaker. He's a very, very amazing guitar player. Some people know him as the Doorbell DevRel. We'll hear about more of that in a bit. And he's a big enthusiast of Vue.js. So welcome to the show, Tim Benniks. How are you doing?
Thank you so much. I need to say, your offline voice and online voice of this podcast is the most amazing change I've ever heard. It's super cool. Thanks for that. Like, you're a born showman. We all know that.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, we had a little talk beforehand with like a few calm topics about tractors, garden work, everything.
Exactly.
And here we go. Click.
Yes, into the real thing.
Exactly. So yeah, how are things? Pretty busy.
All good. Yes, as always. Like, I work at a startup, so things are going fast and everything changes all the time. And I get to use a lot of Vue, but also I have to use all the other things.
Yeah, all the other frameworks.
So I'm learning as we go, basically.
I think that will be an interesting topic when we cover the DevRel stuff in a bit. But maybe let's start in the beginning. I like to do that with guests a lot, to start like, okay, how did you get into Vue.js at all? Or maybe like from programming? Because as I know, but our audience might not yet, you didn't learn programming like straight away in high school. There was a bit of a journey there.
No, there's a whole journey there. And there's actually another podcast I did a few years ago where it was all these people that came outside of code in and into code and how they did that. And I'm one of those weird ones because I studied to be a nurse, which is not something you would connect to, being a programmer.
Not necessarily. No, that's true.
I am by nature super creative. And so I've always wanted to do something creative, like playing guitar or building something or drawing. And then at one point, a friend of mine showed me that he built a little website with Flash. And it had like some animation. I was like, okay, let's go. It was done. And I used to play some old school games, and we had like a clan. So we would like be 16 years old and play with some friends. And now that's super normal. Back then, really not.
True.
And so I just wanted to like make configs for the game and have clan tags and make like simple website. And it never became anything, but it gives you like a very simple into trying out, hey, what is HTML? Do I even need Flash? All those things, right?
True. I mean, you had a purpose, also the problem to solve, right? That's always the best thing.
Yeah. And even if you don't understand what you're doing, up until like my second job, I don't actually think I knew what I was doing. But I'm old. Like in that time, nobody knew.
Yeah, we're all beginners.
Right?
Yeah.
Exactly. If you were able to do HTML that was somewhat semantic, you were in the top 1%.
Yeah, because we didn't have like a Stack Overflow.
Oh no,
not a thing.
Yeah, none of the things.
We don't even talk about AI.
Yeah, even that. And like I'm looking at some of the answers AI is giving now, like Copilot, and you're looking at, that might be like a thing we did in 2009.
Yes.
Right. It's kind of fun how that history seeps into it, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Now, I think I started doing it more and more. And then over time, I was able to pay like my university tuition with it. And I just did like super small things for friends and family. And then I realized the school that I did to become a nurse, it wasn't really for me, because I noticed when you work in that field, if you're super creative, you can actually solve a lot of problems. Mm-hmm. But not everybody in that space is in the mindset to be creative and then solve these problems, because people are literally dying on you every day. You have to fix things. And everybody is in panic mode. Everybody is in complaining mode. And it's just really hard. And it was also right at the time where the healthcare system in the Netherlands, where I'm from, switched to a more private approach, much more money regulated and very complicated thing. And now it's kind of all right. But back then in that switch, I think in my class there were 230 people, of which probably 10 are a nurse now.
Oh, wow. That's really low quota.
In that year.
Crazy.
And so, yeah, at one point I was having a dinner with my parents, and I said, I saw my brother go to like a coding school, and I was like, I want that too. And they're like, please do it. Do what you want. It's much better than you just do what you think you want, right? And so yeah, from there I did that school probably for 8 months, dropped out, started my first job, and there we go.
But it's so nice also from a parent saying, hey, yeah, do actually what you like to do, like not get stuck in a job where you already know like, hey, that's not for me. So there's also like a big props to like your parents, because like it's a big pillar of support there.
That's a huge benefit and a huge win. And the funny thing is, I didn't expect that at all. I felt like I had to do that thing because it was expected and we talked about it.
Yep.
And like, that's a good cause, because otherwise, if I hadn't done that nursing thing, I would have gone to, a school for music. And I already kind of didn't choose that because I thought the other thing was better, because everybody expected, not really expected, but it feels like a more solid approach. And it wasn't. So in the end, I still did whatever I wanted, which was nice. And it's a creative outlet. So I learned it through seeing people fail. And nobody knew what they were doing. So who cares? And then we started building cool things. And then most of all that after that is luck. You come at the right place at the right time and you work hard and you have the right people around you to teach you. I had luck and I still have luck like that. And so that's cool.
I think like luck is definitely a part of it, but as you said, you worked hard, and I think this is something that's always important. It's not only like, okay, they're lucky people, unlucky people. Like if you don't work hard, luck doesn't matter that much. So
True. You have to be in it. Like I always wanted to really go for it and do something really amazing, even though I didn't know what that amazing was. And so you're kind of oblivious. And so I've worked in this place where we built social networks, but before Facebook was a thing, or like maybe at the same time. And so we had these ideas of like doing small social networks around art related things. And then you could actually have multiple accounts on these different social networks, but you could be seen as one. So we need to figure out, how can I jump from the one social network to the other one without changing my login, but they cannot know about each other's credentials, and you probably know where we're going with this.
Yeah.
And so we're working on that stuff. And I remember doing like a drag and drop dashboard so you could see all your accounts. On all these websites, you could just drag your account from the one to the next to do a proper move, or only do a clone, and all these weird things.
Wow, okay.
And so from that came the first version of OAuth.
Really?
And I had zero idea. I was working on the first version of OAuth because it was just horrible. Nobody understood it because we didn't have that concept of I'm logging in with A to B, and then we have to show the design of A on B. Otherwise, you don't know that you're logging in there with it. We didn't know. We had to find out the hard way. And then we did everything with get queries. So it was a huge URL with all the states.
Also limited as in like the URL length. You only,
exactly. Yeah. We were hitting the limits of routers of people. And sometimes you would actually not be able to log in because we kept the state on the URL. It's horrible. But the thing is, at that time, the people working in my office, they were contributing to the OAuth group. Or I'm not sure what it was called, like a working group, I think. And so we contributed a whole bunch of things, figuring out what to do and to try. And then, of course, Facebook came along, took it, make OAuth 2, and now everything is awesome. But it's so fun that you're completely oblivious. Just try some stuff and just use it. And then if it works, it works. And now looking back, that was pretty cool.
Oh, absolutely. And I think it's really nice to be also like close to like pioneering such a thing as like OAuth. So like, okay, hey, we faced the issues beforehand, and oh, here is a way to solve it. We like contributed to it. And I mean, without OAuth 1, OAuth 2 wouldn't be there. So that's it's always nice, even though of course it's like, oh yeah, okay, we worked on a certain part, and then unfortunately it's not in use anymore. But all the things that got inspired because of this, it's like it's such a big impact in the end.
But that's also luck of the place where you are, and also the time, because do you know this payment provider called Adyen?
Yes.
Or Adyen? Back then, we had to implement them on our website because people could buy a ticket to an event with that same account with OAuth and then pay. Mm-hmm. Then there were 4 people on the canals in an office trying to do payment. And so we're like, dude, that's so cool. And it works so weirdly. Let's do it like this. And then so you influence each other somehow. And now they're probably the biggest company for payment in the world.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
not sure, but it's close.
They're definitely huge. Shout out, by the way.
They knew how to do it, but it's kind of fun that I, of course, didn't contribute to their success, but you're close to it in that same, it's like the time space,
Yeah.
right?
And I mean,
and so that's where that luck is, though.
I agree. And like also being like in reach to these people, like having also thanks to the internet, but also sometimes physical to be in touch with
Amsterdam was a good time in like 2006, 2007. It was an amazing place for startups and stuff.
I mean, still, it's such a big tech capital. As someone living in Amsterdam now, it's pretty amazing. So yeah, definitely no regrets moving here. Of course, not just for that, but it's a nice side effect for sure.
Be careful. No, but my first hit into Vue.js came a lot later.
Yeah, no,
because I was in the space when jQuery came out and it solved all our problems.
Yeah, like it unified all the APIs from all different browsers,
and it came up with APIs that are now normal. It's incredible what these guys did. And so then we had this whole phase of not wanting to do jQuery anymore because it was kind of slow and all this DOM stuff was hard. And like we went through all the things. And I tried Angular and React before I tried Vue, but only their very first versions. And I remember distinctly, I could not wrap my head around data flow first, then structure of HTML versus HTML first and then attaching something to alter it.
Yeah.
I remember distinctly when my backend colleagues figured out, hey, with Angular, we can do this whole data first approach. And we can have these models and all these really cool things that then output into HTML that becomes something to show a state. And for them, it was so normal. And I was struggling. I hated it all. It just didn't work for me, which is kind of fun because I just didn't use it for a long time. And everything that we did was just vanilla JavaScript.
Mm-hmm.
For the biggest projects we could have conceived, like, we did FIFA 2012 website.
Really?
For EA Games, things like that. All just vanilla JavaScript, just, raw dogging it.
Yeah.
And so, it's kind of fun how these things move. And then when Vue came out, I remember I went to a new job to work on this huge thing. And then they said, yeah, we're going to use Vue.js, but not in the way that it was intended, or not really.
What was different?
Yeah, that's the thing. You probably know better than me because you've been in the Vue ecosystem a bit longer, even though you're younger. They had a backend generated HTML page from a .NET thing, where we would then sprinkle on Vue.js in different places, and then it would just enhance the DOM.
Ah, okay.
Which is exactly like how I used to work my whole career. Well, I had like little dabbles in isomorphic JavaScript with Node.js that would then have scripts on both sides. Do we have to explain what that means? Because now it's so normal.
Actually, we talked about it in the very first episode about the need for server-side rendering. So if people don't know what SSR or universal rendering or isomorphic JavaScript is, then back to episode 1.
Yeah, go to episode 1.
Good plug there.
That's my luck. I didn't know that was going to come up. But anyways, I did dabble in that a little bit. And so I thought, okay, so this is this new project. And I knew the backend stack because I had worked with that for a long time.
Yep.
And so I thought, why do Vue.js at all? It doesn't make any sense because it's so amazing to do single page apps with and all that state and all that cool stuff. And they even came up with, and that was right before I started, some of my now good friends actually worked on that architecture, and they had a combination of jQuery and Vue.js.
Why both?
That was my question.
Yeah.
First day I joined, I was looking at this, is like, okay, Vue.js is this new thing. I've never touched it. Like, why the heck would we use that? Then I saw the jQuery thing, and I saw these like mid-level developers getting no guidelines on a huge project. We're talking 3,000 websites here, or like something like that. And they were just making plugins and stuff without rules, and it was like all over the place. And like, oh boy, this is going to be interesting to say the least. Because that backend system also had a front-end accelerator that was based on jQuery. So it kind of makes sense that they chose that.
Okay, yeah.
But I don't know why I did it. But the first time I came in, I wasn't the lead of all of it yet. I was just in charge of this one project for the front-end. And I said, you know what, guys? Let's do only Vue. Let's kill this whole front-end accelerator of this tool. Let's build a grunt config.
Oh,
Or maybe it was a gulp. It might have been a gulp already. I think it was a gulp.
like Grunt and Gulp. Like, I'm probably pretty sure some people listening don't know any of these tools. So,
Good for you, people. Please don't learn.
yeah,
We had to come from somewhere. So
true.
and in the end we built it on Webpack and a newer Vue stack, and it all was awesome. But we had that, and I said, let's kill all the jQuery you already did. Let's rebuild it together and learn Vue together to rebuild what we did. And we started to use it a lot for all the interactive elements on these websites. And they were kind of like in the cosmetic space with lots of animations and fancy shampoo bottles turning and all that kind of stuff.
Lots of elements, lots of images. Yeah.
Lots of like lazy loading, carousels, all the things that like cosmetics luxury websites would have. And I didn't know it then, but that set the tone for all our projects. And we went deep and we really learned Vue 2 at that time. It was when we started, it was Vue 1, and then Vue 2 came out. And I was lucky enough to not know Vue 1. And so I just did 2.
Yeah, that helps, like with a fresh mindset, let's say. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I knew nothing. I just like, let's try. And we taught it to all our developers, and everybody started to love it because you have this, especially with the options API, was one way to go.
Yeah.
Or kind of one way to go with its limitations, but we loved those limitations because if we were teaching people who were just starting out could just look at it. It's always the same. Let's go.
Exactly. Oh, yeah.
And
where to put things? It's very easy because you group it by the category of these things. So
exactly. And so it really fit my brain personally because I'm this template first person, and then you attach other things to it. That's why I had so much trouble with JSX for a long time because there it merges everything together.
Yeah.
Where in Vue you had the template and then you had the script
and back in Vue 2, even like the template tag first and all your template part, and then the script tag. Like now it's the other way around commonly, but I mean you can do it however you prefer.
Sure, I still do it the Vue 2 way.
That's totally fine. I mean, if
it works, it works, right?
Exactly. And if it's just that, then I mean, the grouping of let's say variables like, I don't know, my state, my props, my computed, and so on. With the composition API nowadays, of course, that makes sense to group by logic. Like if you have big components and not basically copy the options API way. So as long as that's not happening.
Yeah, this setup function thing, it's for me, it feels now, looking back, it's much nicer because we used to whack every prop in the data thing of option.
That was the space for it.
And it all became reactive, but it wasn't even needed. Right. And so over time, it just got slower.
And back in time, you didn't really have a way to say this shouldn't be reactive. Like you could put it actually in top level of the other options, and then access it with $options dot whatsoever. As like
we've done things like that, like workarounds like that, and or in a mounted function, just put a var or something.
Yes, yes.
We've done all the things. But the interesting thing is, like, because I've done all these bigger projects over time, as like from a junior to a lead of multiple projects, and when we started using Vue and we were teaching each other to do it well, we found our way of doing Vue. I think we had like 80% less bugs.
I can imagine,
which is crazy. Like for a project like that, on that level, for a customer like that, that was a huge win. Of course, our backend systems caused enough trouble, so it was never great. But at least I could see it myself in my personal space from going from like these vanilla or jQuery-based things to Vue. It changed the game completely.
And why do you think the bugs were way less compared to jQuery or vanilla JavaScript? Like what changed from the coding perspective and from the mindset?
I think because it's quite structured, that helped a lot. So juniors and seniors could do similar things very fast, but also how Vue abstracted all the event bindings and data attributes setting or removing or all of that. It's done extremely well. And I think that's kind of that state machine of how HTML is set up and how you can bind events to it. That's where we saw most of the trouble. And that's where it literally just took that whole thing away. So now the issues we would find is like some race conditions here and there or memory leaks because we would do weird things. Of course, that's what happens.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
And the hardest bits, what became in the end the more fun things, is we had to do accessibility AA or sometimes AAA.
So AAA is tough. Like AA is doable.
Double A is quite doable
Yeah.
now that I've done it many, many times. But we had to teach people, okay, you have a Vue component and that gives you a pop-up. And inside the pop-up, you have to do a few things with your keyboard and whatever, and then the pop-up has to go away. What you need to do, especially in that time, we didn't have a lot of extra tools that we have now with Vue use, but we had to make a focus loop inside the pop-up. You couldn't focus something behind it anymore. And then sometimes, based on the opinion of the accessibility people, you have to use your arrows, or it has to be the tab, or it's a different kind of list. Because with tabs, it could be arrows or the tab key, if it's a list of tabs, like a
Oh,
menu
okay.
item.
Yes. Yes.
And so we were dealing with experts in the field that knew what they wanted opinion-wise. So apparently, AA, if you do that, you can just get code compliance, but that's not actual compliance. Because then there has to be multiple people with opinions and say, yes, this is good. And then you have to recheck it. And I had developers cry when we tried to do these kind of things. But when you work together, in the end, it worked out so well. And you learn a ton.
Yeah.
It's super fun.
Just to chime in here, could you just briefly explain what AAA and AA mean in terms of accessibility guidelines, just like very, very briefly?
It's just how accessible something is for people that need assistance. And there's a few things that you should say before we go into that. A lot of people have temporary assistance needs, which is very interesting. Let's say Michael, who just had a baby, he will have a baby on his arm and then has to use his keyboard because he cannot use his mouse now, or both. That's a temporary accessibility need. And there's also a difference between getting the actual stamp of yes, it's there versus the code compliance of it. Because there's an extra opinionated piece there. Because if you look at something holistically, all your code can be awesome, but if it's unusable, it's not accessible.
Absolutely.
And so the difference between all these A's is just how many extra rules are set on top. And so AA is probably the base everybody should be able to do. You should be able to have a whole keyboard. Like you can do everything with your keyboard on the whole side. There's labels on all the things. There's if something is expanded with area roles, you have to say it's expanded or not. All those kind of things, those states. But when you go to AAA, you have to also be able to say, let's do a checkbox for extra contrast, or have a checkbox for no animations are allowed. So you remove the checkbox, so the user can set it, and then and everything has to scale perfectly. And so we've learned this the hard way, where in Chrome, when you just do Command plus, everything kind of scales nicely, right? Even if you don't use EMs or REMs. But when you then go to Firefox at that time, it would scale it differently because you used pixels somewhere.
Yeah.
And so you learn over time all these like details we shouldn't go into now because you have a whole different podcast then. All these little tricks. And in the end, we build great websites because of it. Because what you start doing is you use much more of the browser. And then you enhance. So it's basically this enhancement of basics of browsers. So the more you use the browser, like if you do a form, actually build a form. And then enhance its features so you can do fancier things. And so we just build better website with less bugs because of that.
I think also because you focus on the user, as you said, like you actually test it, maybe even like use a screen reader or whatnot to like properly test your website.
We had so many like plugins installed.
Yeah.
And then people who actually use those, they use screen readers about 60 times faster than you think they will.
Yes.
It's crazy.
I've seen it like in real life, how people that rely on a screen reader every day like use it, and you think like, what's going on? Like they know exactly because that's how they use the internet, right?
And also you realize how crappy you build something because they'll hear the same menu item the whole time. And if you just said what type of menu item it is, it's much nicer for them, right? So they have to tap in again. It's like all these things, like you really learn how to build things better.
Exactly.
And Vue helped a lot with that. Let's be honest.
That's even better. Like, because I think nowadays people always say like, oh yeah, the JavaScript framework, they will like really mess up with accessibility. And of course there are some things that you have to take care of when you use, like when you build an SPA, like when you navigate from one route to another, to have like a route announcer.
Yeah, exactly. That's an important one. Like use actual links for things
as well. Yeah.
Example. But I think the only ones that really screwed up accessibility was systems like Knockout.js. Remember that?
Oh, never
Where
used
they
it,
would
but
so Knockout had like this first reactivity idea, but they would render a span to put all the reactive properties something could be in. So you would have multiple spans that would be rendered and removed and rendered and
I
removed the
see.
whole time.
Yeah.
It was revolutionary, but horrible.
Horrible for A11Y. That's true. That's true.
Yeah, exactly.
Also, we've linked the WCAG guidelines down in the show notes, of course, for double and triple
Yes,
A.
smart.
But that's as Tim said, I said for another podcast, because we can fill so much time on that. It's super interesting.
Exactly.
And by the way, I like that a lot. I also try to use that info about the temporary accessibility needs. Same like I don't know. Okay, you can't listen to sound. That's also like some people are deaf, or sometimes it's just a loud environment, like a club or like you're a bartender or whatnot, and so on. So
or slow internet.
Yes,
stuff like that.
Yes, so it's
progressive enhancement is more about accessibility than you probably think.
That's true, and I think everyone will find a situation where they have been into or might get into easily, where they would appreciate these features. And if you think about like, okay, hey, it's in the end, it's all of us. Like it's good for all of us. Then it's also a bit easier to think about implementing that.
Yeah, I was lucky again that I worked on these huge programs where they had top-down rules. It has to be AA or you do not go live.
That's pretty cool. Yeah.
Right. But it also said you have to render the whole page, including page load of a CMS you don't actually have much control over. And document ready has to be in like 3 seconds, I think.
That's the performance part. Yeah.
Yeah. But they would, if we would not make that KPI, we would be fined like $5,000 a day until it's fixed.
Really?
We signed that deal.
Wow.
The thing is, though, they would add tag manager and add any kind of crazy thing on top, obviously. So we negotiated that down. It's like we deliver it like this, and then we don't touch it.
Yeah.
Then it's you. And then like you find all these balances, and that's how it works if you do it at such scale. With companies that work in 60 markets that all have different needs, it's too hard to maintain that constantly. But it's really interesting to get into a project and then do all those things really well, and then let it go. That is just how.
Then see how it's rotting.
Yes.
No, but
and there's a bunch of rot in there because we didn't have loading equals lazy in image tags then. So I built all this JavaScript stuff with Vue.js to do like really nice ways of lazy loading.
Yeah.
But that didn't age well, right? It's actually horrible for CLS now.
Yes, but the browser's catching up. And I mean, it's also good, right? But that also shows how often you actually have to touch older or like running projects again to update things, to keep on track. But what you said about the balance of like Google Tag Manager, it's always like the hell of every performance analyst and developer saying, oh yeah, it's working super fast and then tracking on. And but on the other side, of course, marketing department wants the data, wants to figure out.
You need it.
Yeah, conversion
I'm in a
rates.
marketing department now, and I realize how much we need that data. So I now talk to developers the way marketers used to talk to me. Because there's just different, maturities in different places, and you just need something sometimes.
But you also know both sides, so you have an easier way to, first of all, explain to the developer why it's needed. And with all the cool tools nowadays, with like, I don't know, Party Town and Cloudflare's REST and so on. So it can even be in a somewhat performant way.
Exactly.
And on the other hand, you can also explain to marketing, maybe, oh yeah, let's maybe use a different tracking tool if that's possible. Which has less impact on the site and will maybe even lead to a better conversion rate because the site is loading faster and so on and so on.
Yeah, there's lots to say there between marketers and developers and how it all works. But I'm pretty happy that I've now seen both sides.
Yeah, and I think that's so valuable. Like I was talking with Mark in the previous episode, who's also talking a lot about the business versus the developer side, and so like, hey, if developers understand a bit more of business, and maybe also business understands a bit more of developer side, like high level, that's so much worth it.
Oh, it's huge. Like this is one of those things that I learned from these large programs that we would do. It's literally a pot of gold for your career, as long as you understand where to pick from. Because I did a whole conference talk about what I've learned about how do you act as an individual in a group of people that have to build this complicated website for your own success. But then also, In this, I made a little framework because we're developers. We love making frameworks.
Of course.
And so you have it for you, but then also how does your leader have to work? And also how do you have to work as a group to be successful? And almost all of it is all about have overview of what other disciplines do. Because if you don't know why somebody made some sort of business decision, you can argue whatever you want. You're just being seen as annoying because you don't understand why they chose. If you actually understand it, you have some overview, you can argue easily and they'll probably agree with you. But maybe due to some other circumstance, they had to choose it. But then if you as a developer understand, you're no longer really upset.
That's true. But
if you don't, you're horrified.
Yes,
you know what I mean?
Yes. I fully agree. And in the end, also, like, everybody works towards the same goal, right? So that's also something, like, there is no department A versus department B, or like marketers versus developers. And we all want the same thing, but so everybody can work well, there are different requirements, of course. And
yeah, exactly.
As you said, talking about it is the key here, because otherwise,
I just failed for a few years and then suddenly it all came together. That's the way, I guess.
True, true. So yeah, then that big project, you said like 6,000 websites. It's huge.
Oh, you doubled it, but I'll take it. That's fine.
Oh, sorry. Well, from 3,000 to 6,000, yeah, same magnitude.
No, but you know what? After a few thousand, it's all the same because you try to make software that you can reuse.
Of course.
And then they can, because this is generally complicated for this kind of programs where a large company is usually super distributed and decentralized. Because you sell a shampoo differently in Amsterdam than in New York. Different people, different marketing, different messaging, probably even different product, even though it says the same thing. And so they adopted that and sold a crap ton of this stuff. They know how to sell. But if you do websites like that, it's very messy.
Yeah, fair.
Because in Amsterdam, they would hire agency A. In New York, they would hire agency B. And they would both build the same thing. And then you would see in Denmark, they put a website up with 60 languages. But the Dutch one also has that language. Like, who rules here? Like, it never works. And so, yeah, you have to kind of centralize that bit a little bit. And then suddenly, we did like one of their bigger brands had these 60 markets. Mm-hmm. So probably 25 languages, 60 markets. But that code base was relatively the same.
Just like deployed it for each market with
you had different hubs and they could do different content and then different localizations, of course, different translations. And then some of them had their own components. And so that was another KPI of this program where it says you have to have, I think it was like 30% reuse of the few components between all the brands. So every carousel of all these websites was basically the carousel I built with its 80% unit tests. And it just worked everywhere and they would adapt it. And then we would build it in a way that's like a base project. Okay, let's add the way they can add different buttons because they'll always want that, or swipe in a different speed.
Of course.
And so all these implementers, all the developers could check our docs, grab the thing and use it. And so that way you can scale to a lot of websites fast.
But did you build like an own, let's say, component library, or how was that component?
That was the goal, but it never worked. So what we did you have to be real.
Yeah.
Those things are really hard because you make the money based on the projects you do. If you're going to do a component library project, who's going to pay for that? It's really hard. So you have to do it on the side somehow. So of course we had some of it, but we would just build a new project for a new brand, really nice, updated things. And then other projects could just grab that stuff from us and then sometimes copy it. And sometimes because we work with C#, we had these NuGet packages. It's like the NPM of that language. And so we had sometimes backend and frontend components bundled, and they could just grab it from the NPM or the NuGet and then just install it. But that was an ideal that was never really realized, I feel.
I see. And I mean, as long as the components don't change that often, like there's
some had some updates, but the old ones still kind of worked because everything went through QA, everything like round after round after round. So every project, even if it's a year older than the other one with different code, it's still good.
Yeah, it still works, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. No, but I think that's also a good point. And the component library, I've heard quite some people talking about, okay, we do like projects, we do component libraries. I think, especially for a scenario like you described, like you have a big brand with lots of marketing, lots of websites, like starting with the concept of saying, okay, we have like a component library that resembles corporate identity and so on. I think that makes sense. But as you said, it can also slow down the process a bit in the beginning. Like, okay, we have to build it. People have to like install the package and so on. And there are updates, and then they have to update, or the classic, oh, there's a bug fix. Instead of fixing it like in the component library or telling the responsible,
you fix it on your own.
Yeah,
of course.
And you don't contribute back.
We had all these problems, and we always tried it. And then what we've noticed, because I've done a few of these kind of bigger programs, where you would start really enthusiastically, and then halfway in, Storybook is no longer updated.
Yeah.
People start taking things slightly differently because they just have to make decisions and run fast and go live because their customer is on fire, which is always the case. So as long as you start with a good base and then people deviate, at least you gave them some rules to break.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
As long as they're a direction, break the rules. And if it's wrong, you fix it. Otherwise, go live, be happy. And so if you're less idealistic, it's actually better, more pragmatism.
Oh, I also think like start with, as you said, start with like the idealistic view of like, okay, let's set it up nice way. Yeah. And then we can like slowly, like maybe reduce the standards or allow some more fast paced work on it. And maybe at some point also cleaning up technical debt.
That I'm not sure how often that happened, to be fair.
In your project,
like in lots of those, like for these bigger programs, yeah. There were maintenance companies that were different than us. So that's always complex. I'm sure they did clean up. I'm sure of it.
I think so too. I mean, especially if it's like long running at some point, you kind of have to, because if you have to maintain, update things, this is a dependency hell. Well, what's the choice?
Yeah, I think those websites, like for different brands, it's different. So for these particular ones, I feel like they just run for 2 years and they want to redesign, and they tend to just throw money at something else and just build a new thing.
That's also possible. Yeah. But also, as you said, that depends on the project and on the brand. I also know, like, exactly. Especially in e-commerce, people saying, okay, no, we want to have that in-house. We don't want to rebuild it every X years, but rather like realize our own requirements and so on. But of course, it's a total different type of project then.
Well, I've worked for that, like, and I can brand, the name of that brand was Louis Vuitton, where they had like this old Java system with I think it was a custom front end based on whatever that system outputted as its front end. It was a monolith. Mm-hmm. And so they needed to separate it out because I think one release would be like 24 to 48 hours. Because it's so big, yeah. So many different systems running in the monolith, and you have to kind of DevOps it until it works, kind of thing. And then they went for this thing: we need to release every 2 weeks. This is our new cadence. And so all these tech people are like, "Holy crap!"
Yeah,
one CSS change, and we're losing 48 hours, and then maybe something goes wrong, and then the Chinese market starts up again. Oh, let's roll back. So they had this, and it's a very interesting approach because it worked pretty well, but they had to have a huge team. And so they started hiring people to solve the problems of the system.
Interesting.
Rather than if something had to change or be innovative, they didn't hire those people. They hired like 5-6 teams of 6 people that just fix bugs and build features in the thing. And so at one point we all realized, okay, we just need to separate at least the front end from the back end. So if you want to do a front end change,
yeah, that's faster.
Then that just releases in an hour and we're good. And so some of the people in those teams were able to step up and say, okay, cool. Now I'm going to learn something new. I'm going to do it. But a lot of people were purposely hired to not be that. So they were in this kind of complicated place. And so I think we hired like 20 people or something.
Just for that.
Just for that whole new thing. And so it was a very interesting thing because this company has basically a person at the top that says, this is good, this is bad. For every page.
Crazy. Yeah.
And so I just come from this other project where every content editor was able to make a little puzzle piece of all their components, hit publish, and be happy. For Louis Vuitton, that doesn't exist. In Belgium and in the US and wherever, those pages are the same. They're the best copywritten, best designed experiences. It's 100% different product. And so for me to switch to that is so different.
Yeah, once again, a really different mindset as well, plus requirements too, because then
completely
you don't need less flexibility, which is pretty amazing.
I was pretty happy for that. I was pitching that whole thing with flexibility in mind, and they kept telling me, Tim, why are you talking about that? We don't care. I just couldn't put my mind there. At one point, of course, we did. And that means we could actually just say, okay, we have the old website and we have the new front end. Let's just grab a page, because it was almost not a component library. Well, we did build a component library to make everything kind of the same, but we could take it page by page. And so we would just have a server in front that would say, oh, this still goes to the old, this goes to the new.
Yeah.
And so in a year, we just built page, and suddenly it was really fast. And they didn't know the difference, because this is another really interesting thing when you work with these high-level companies. You cannot just do a big bang release and wait for a year. People always want to see change, update. Hey, how does this impact the numbers? Like it's an organic beast. It has to go. And so we did a redesign with a really amazing agency. And then we applied the redesign to the old site and to the new.
That's clever. Yeah, that works.
So every 2 weeks or every 3 after the sprint, they would see an update in the design on the old site. So we were training all these folks that were working there to apply those redesigns in these horrible Java, XSLT, whatever nightmare they had to work in, to update all these things. And then we would build the new thing on the site, looking exactly the same, but then with Vue.js and Nuxt.
Yeah. Smooth.
And but that worked extremely well. It was hard to do. But over time, you saw that website pick up speed. And then we would be building on that monolith. We would be building API endpoints and stuff to be able to serve the front end. But they did it in such a good way that at one point this backend could be removed and another one could be plugged in.
That's really a bit modulific then, let's say.
Yeah, we just had to make it modular.
Yeah.
I haven't worked on that side for a long time, so I don't even know if they fully removed that backend yet. But maybe they don't need to. If they're used to content editing in that, it's cool because everything is such a structure. They just have to make JSON structures, essentially.
And they exactly know what they need and how to do it anyway.
Oh, yeah. They had 4 people, I think, working day and night, figuring out search results. These shoes cannot be next to this bag, so let's change that algorithm a little bit. And it's incredible how much focus on detail there was. It was a really cool project.
For such a luxurious brand, you kind of would expect that as well, I would say, but still fascinating.
Every pixel is perfect, basically.
Yeah. But as you said, migration, that also like rang a bell of like, actually nobody wants a big bang migration unless like it's a very tiny project, because in the end, you always have the issue of like, okay, you can't just like say, let's stop our main product for like, I don't know, half a year, couple months, whatever.
Oh yeah, it's impossible, right?
No. But on the other hand, if you do it like you did, and you described it very well, like a parallel thing, then you always have to apply everything that's new on both ends.
Exactly. And that worked pretty well, but we also needed to gain the trust that we could pull this off. And we had to hire new people and they had to hire freelancers. And so it was a really delicate balance of, okay. And they would keep asking me, Tim, how many people are you going to hire? Like, I don't know. If we're going to go agile.
Yeah. Let's see.
You'll see when I see. And that was really complicated to see. And because they come from this super organized approach, but we had to be extremely agile to make this work.
Yeah.
And so that was a really cool time because I had meetings with Philip from back then, Vue Storefront. But it was Vue Storefront Alpha for version 1, I think.
Well, that's quite some time ago.
They just started. It's like 2017-ish, something like that. And so we looked at it as like, this is actually perfect. And then I went on holiday and I hired really, really good architects. And they just started with Nuxt 2 out of the box.
Yeah.
And that worked so well, we never looked back. So I'm sorry, Philip.
If you hear that.
It wasn't mature enough then. Now, different story. But back then, that wasn't there yet. But it was really cool to see the beginnings of all that. And they need a lot of luck to change it all to Nuxt 3 now. Because Nuxt 4 is coming out like next month.
Oh, that's fine. That's fine. Nah, with Nuxt 4, that's no biggie. First,
that's what they said for Nuxt 3. No.
Oh, no. Luckily not. That would be a blatant lie, and we all know that now.
Oh yeah, exactly. Now Nuxt 3 took a while to get there, but now, holy crap, it works so well.
Yeah, right. But
yeah, it's just ridiculous.
Talking about the past, so you were using Vue and then Nuxt at Louis Vuitton, but how did it come that you applied Vue and Nuxt there? Like, I guess there were also people saying, hey, why not React? Hey, why not, I don't know, Angular, whatever was fancy back then.
The funny thing is, if you work at an agency, you assemble a crew of people that can do a certain job well. because you don't want to have them sit twiddling their thumbs on the bench, not doing something for a project, or if they don't have a project. And of course, you want to hire kind of generalists. So if you understand Vue, you probably understand React also a little bit. But because we did that large Vue.js project before, I had this whole crew of amazing Vue developers. They were really, really good. And so why not propose Vue? Because for us, it was then it's kind of the cheapest, I guess.
Yeah, of course. You had experience. You had like the people there knowing that as well.
Exactly. And also in France, Vue and Nuxt are big. And if you're France, Paris based, like I would just take the train to Bordeaux and speak to the Nuxt guys in their office.
Yeah.
Because why not? You know, have some wine and discuss a project. That worked pretty well. And so we kind of just pitched it almost like this is the only thing why not?
Yeah, there's no reason against it. Yeah.
Yeah. And the only thing you could think of is that you could potentially, if you wanted a lot of freelancers, for example,
job market,
because you have to grow, React is easier.
Yeah, of course.
Like the job market in React is bigger. The thing is, though, the quality range in that job market of React folks is huge. Like if I wouldn't do this now, but if I were to become like a freelancer to fix up React projects, I would be rich. Because there's so little structure, you have to be incredibly good to do the best things. And it can go like to the stratosphere how awesome it can be, but it's really easy to miss it. And of course, with Vue to a degree, of course, you can do that too. I've seen horrible Vue implementations.
Same, yeah.
But it feels it's slightly more structured due to the approach Vue took with the template and the thing, and it's slightly more structured at least.
I agree. I was talking to another colleague at a conference recently, talking about like, yeah, he's also doing lots of code reviews, and said like, yeah, okay. Framework versus not a framework. And then the topic was like, yeah, framework gives an easy onboarding because, well, every Vue application looks the same. And I said like, yeah, probably same for React and Angular. And then he was like, yeah, well, Angular, yeah, sure. Vue, of course. React, I don't know. I don't think so.
I'm not bad mouthing it here because I've done a bunch of React projects recently and I kind of love it. It's just a different approach to it. And like, I loved my Next.js project that I did before I did the app directory thing.
So the Pages router was still your favorite. Don't like the app router.
Now I don't try Pages router anymore because I feel like the app router should be the thing. And then you find so many quirks. It's not there yet. Well, it's great. The ideas are super awesome. And when you see the folks who build it, demo it, you're like, yes. And then you use it and it's like, why doesn't it work?
Yeah, it's like, it's nice if it works in a demo, but then in a real life project having all these issues.
Yeah, but they just have to grow. It's the same as when Nuxt 3 came out and it was so different. It had to just grow.
Yeah, like best practices and patterns have to emerge. Yeah. Like people have to use it, of course. And I'm also very happy that we are kind of over that phase, and like Vue 3 and Nuxt 3 are like in a very mature way of like, okay, how to use it, how to do data fetching and so on and so on. So that's really a good thing. Yeah. Exactly. But also, like, of course, not about bad mouthing React. It's more like the structure, like because of the flexibility, because it's more like it just JavaScript approach.
Exactly, it's very interesting, though.
And it's also way more flexible. And then you have like, okay, state management, you can use whatever, and then you have like maybe class components and hooks and this and that. That's of course, these are problems that the Vue ecosystem, for example, doesn't have in that way. We have options API, composition API, and that's it, more or less. So besides that, we have one way to go. We have like one router, we have one state management with UX being obsolete now. And that's a pretty good thing.
You can use state now by Nuxt, I guess.
Yeah, as well. True. If you use Nuxt, then you can also use that indeed. But in the end, you could also, of course, build it all yourself with composables. Like nobody stops you doing that.
Oh, yeah. I've been down that road before because I just didn't know any better. And it kind of works.
Oh, it works pretty fine. Right? Yeah. But of course, Pinia in the end is also a composable, but let's say a glorified composable with like all the DevTools things, the plugins, all that, and a nice ecosystem to work with, and with lots of thoughts from Eduardo, also with like how does it hydrate and all that. So in the end, there is a reason why there is the solution, but of course, to get started with or just to try it out, you can just do it yourself with composables.
But to be honest, I was building something a while back. I forgot what it was exactly, but it was lots of rendering of HTML that was super conditional and complicated. And I think it was probably in my conference talk that I did recently, where people could live vote, and then you would see a bunch of different screens update based on people's live votes and logins, and lots of craziness in that talk.
I
And
love
I
that.
had it was a little insane, to be fair, but in that I was like rendering different buttons that people can share their vote, and there was like 4 or 5 different options. And I was thinking at that time, like, if I had JSX and I could just render little scriptlets of HTML that I would then later on concatenate, and then that's the thing, would have been incredible.
But you could.
Of course, in Vue you can just do it.
Exactly.
And you can even do JSX in Vue.
Indeed.
I just didn't want to go there. But like, this is the thing, right? In the end, all these tools have their own benefits. And you just need to kind of let go of your, like, people like to love to be partisan about things. We don't have to do that.
No, it's not.
Just use what you use.
It's not a framework war. I mean, also we all inspire each other as well. And the most important thing is that you can ship amazing things. But of course, if you have a certain use case where you have to think about, I don't know, performance or this or that, then there are just simply cases where you just evaluate, okay, which framework makes it the easiest for me without much manual work. If you know, like, okay, I have to switch maybe my platform provider in the future because you don't know if you go on the edge or not, then of course, for example, Next helps with universal deployment.
I don't even think about which edge I'm pushing it to. It just works.
Yeah, that's so nice. But of course, if you say, okay, we're on Vercel, we need a big job market, and we have team experience again, we have so many people doing React, then why should we say, okay, we use Vue now or Svelte? This is just realistically not how it works.
Exactly.
I think these are pretty amazing end words already. We're going for 52 minutes almost. So
yeah, I just told my colleagues I'm going to be late to our meeting.
Yes.
So if we still had something else, we're good.
Yeah. So I thank you so much for coming. We still have lots of things on the list for another episode. So I'm looking forward to see you back here. Then of course also with Michael. Then we're the 3 of us. And there will be more interesting questions.
Yeah, I would love to look at one point at that conference talk I did, because if you want to go deep into how to connect technologies together in like this live fashion, it was crazy fun to do that with Vue. But that's maybe not for this episode.
Yeah, you can watch it already because the replay is live. Like the last episode, we talked a bit about Vue.js Amsterdam. Of course, also mentioned Tim's talk.
When is it live? This replay?
It's when this is recorded. Not when it's recorded. When this is shown. Broadcasted, released, then it's already live. It should be on Friday the 17th to Thursday the 16th, something like that. So
I'm going to see back my talk for the first time.
Yes, go for it. And yeah, of course, all the links in the show notes as well. And that's definitely something for next episode, to dig deeper into like how to do that, how to play guitar live on stage.
Yeah, that's a whole different thing. But Vue helped me. Like, that's so much fun.
Oh, I can imagine. Also, like as a visitor and viewer, it was amazing. Last question from my side is there two last questions. Is there anything else you didn't talk about besides the conference talk that you were like, hey, this is a must-have? Anything we missed out?
Not really. I think we're good. We still have a lot of more in-depth things if we wanted to, but maybe that's not for now.
For sure, yeah.
One thing though, I saw this morning, you probably know this thing called Mitosis.
Yes.
You heard of it?
Yes, I did.
And so I'll explain it a little bit to the people watching or listening. Because I have this thing at work where I work at Hygraph, which is a headless CMS. And of course, you can use any front end to connect to it. But to be able to show that off, we need good demos. And so our demos are not just in Vue, because I like Vue. There's lots of our developers that use other things. And so I was thinking, what if I do one Mitosis database or one Mitosis code base that would then spread out into all these other front ends for one demo? Because Mitosis can do this thing where you have one base and you say, render it in Vue, please.
Exactly.
Or then render this in React or whatever. And I think it matured a lot. And so that's what I'm pondering today. Like maybe I can do one code base, like a mono repo maybe with a base, and then 4 other projects in different languages.
Yeah.
Have you ever done something like this?
Not really like this. Mitosis as the, let's say, just to give a frame around, it's basically a component library with like own syntax. You can use like the Svelte style or JS.
It's kind of JXX-ish.
Yeah, or JSX. You have these 2 options, and then this can compile to not all, but lots of the popular frameworks. So Vue, Svelte, probably also Angular. I don't know it by heart, but React and so on, so on.
Yeah.
So I think the idea is pretty cool. I know, like when I took a look at this, when I did my thesis, so like roughly 2 months ago, it was still in beta. It worked for simple components, but the more complex guess, I was saying like, okay, first in my thesis said I don't want to use anything that's in beta because it's always hard to compare, things move so fast. But I would definitely give it a try, because especially for demos where you don't have like, I don't know, a huge 30,000 or 300,000 lines of code thing.
No, they're just like simple websites, like a blog starter or stuff like that. That just show features of a CMS.
I think that would be a good start. And even if you say like, okay, let's use this, compile it to, let's say, a Vue or Nuxt code or whatever, and then refine it, it can still maybe.
It's pretty interesting, man.
Yeah, it is.
So that's some stuff I'm pondering. That's not super Vue first, but who cares? It's in the end, we're just building websites, right?
Exactly. And I mean, there's so many people saying, let's do our web component library. Maybe, let's say, a universal language is the future that compiles to the rest.
Oh, we just build it in Vue and compile it to that. We're good.
You can exactly. You can just build in Vue, compile the web components. You're good.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. Then last question is, Tim, where can people follow you if they want to hear more, if they want to see your videos, if they want to see your doorbell DevRel content? Where is it?
Yes. So I used to be doing everything basically just on Twitter, or X. I'm sorry. It's @TimBenniks, just my name. However, recently, like a few of my peers have noticed that LinkedIn has been growing quite a bit for me as an outlet, because of course I'm in a startup, we're in B2B marketing and all that, so it's a little bit more that direction. So also on LinkedIn, it's just my full name, and I do a lot there. So lots of my little videos, like this doorbell DevRel, is like that grew out of everything is so polished and awesome all the time, and marketers make content for other marketers. It's almost kind of like SEO, and then look at what they did and what they did, but nobody learned from it.
Yeah, I see.
So I felt like I'll just walk up to my doorbell, talk to it, and then whatever comes out of that, I just straight post it.
So really raw, let's say.
Just, no edits. If I say something wrong and I look at my phone because I get a message, that's what I will be doing. If my dog runs around, you'll see me changing it. And so I put them on TikTok, actually. I might be a bit old for that, and I don't have any followers there, but that felt like a good place. But I also just upload them to LinkedIn most of the time. And so if you want to find like more fancy videos of mine, you can just go to, again, my full name, Tim Benniks, on YouTube, but also you can go to the Hygraph YouTube channel, where I have lots of videos, and every week we do a live stream. So that one is also pretty full.
Lovely.
And so I guess that's it. And you can just go to timbenniks.dev if you want to see everything combined.
Awesome. Of course, all the links also in the show notes, so you didn't have to get out a pen and paper and write it down. We have it all for you there. And then once again, Tim, thank you so much for coming. It was a lovely conversation about Vue, about how you got your career started, and big projects in Vue.js with their merits, pros, and cons. So
exactly.
I hope to see you also real life soon again, of course, but also here in the podcast or in any other format. We'll see.
Right.
And thanks to everybody. Thanks for listening. Tune into the older episode. If this was your first episode, of course, go all the way back. Super interesting stuff. We already mentioned episode 1 for the need of SSR, the Vue.js Amsterdam episode from last week, and so on and so on. So definitely have a look into that. Thanks for listening, and talk to you soon, folks. Bye-bye.
Cheers.